Right. Good evening. We are Team Blueberry Wireless, and this is our team presentation. And we just want to have a casual conversation talking about our experience, but also to kind of give some insight to our strategy that we had throughout this particular simulation. And I'm introducing myself first. My name is Joseph Seymour, and this is literally my last semester here, at least for my undergrad program at Cambridge. I do plan to transition to a master's program, and I will say kind of at the top that this particular simulation portion of the course is probably one of my best experiences at Cambridge throughout my entire time here. This is something that was just really robust and gave us a chance, I think, to really put into action a lot of things that we were learning. And I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Aldo Thomas to introduce himself next.
Hello, my name is Aldo Thomas. This is my final semester here at Cambridge College. This will put me at 127 credits, I believe. This simulation was very interesting. This is the first kind of educational simulation I've ever participated in, and I really, really enjoyed it. I actually wish we had one more single simulation on some type of product that I can play around with it more, because I kind of feel it causes you to spend more because it becomes a bidding war with you and your teammates. I want to see if I can spend very little and still place very good on the simulation charts or the profit charts. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time to do that. So with that, I will pass it on to Andy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andy. I'm also here taking my final class to wrap up my bachelor's degree at Cambridge College. Um, I must agree with Aldo and Joseph. This part of this course, playing the game, this simulation has been, for me, enjoyable. And this group simulation has, with my group here, has been very well compared to other group assignments. We've kind of bonded since day one, and everything has worked out well for us. All right.
All right, so we're going to just walk through our strategy a little bit. We're going to look at each of the components of the simulation and just kind of have a casual conversation that's going to be led by a different teammate. But we're all going to kind of just talk about our experience around the different components as we were working through this simulation. And the first thing we're going to talk about is actually pricing and production. And to kind of kick off the conversation about pricing we're gonna kick it back to Andy to kind of share a little bit about kind of what was our approach, what were some of our challenges, and then I'll pick up the conversation and talk about our strategy about production. Before you take a look at.
All right. So for pricing, funny part about the group is that
It looks like he got something to do.
There he comes back.
so uh interesting part here is that from the three teammates, all three of us, I kept kind of wanting the lowest part of the pricing, and Aldo kept wanting the highest and pushing the price. And then Joseph was like our ground, like, okay, let's settle in and agree on a price point. So he would kind of, get the group together and settle a price. For sure, the first round is the hardest to kind of price your your product because you're just not sure what everyone would price at. Um, so we kind of skipped this part and just inputted numbers on everything to see how things would go, and just played a little bit with the what if calculator before we actually settled on the price that we were comfortable with. And it has been the way we've treated each round. And again, with myself being wanting the lower end, Aldo wanting to push, and Joseph kind of, bringing us in the middle part of it.
Yeah, my thinking always on the higher price was the brand equity. Once we got past the first round and I saw that we had a high brand equity, my determination was always to increase the price after having a high brand equity, because at this point the customer is trusting of the brand name, not so much the brand services or the brand product. They're really all about the brand name, like a Mercedes Benz. So once you even hear the name, you think high price, but you also think a very reliable product, a very high end product that you are willing to spend the money on to get that high end comfort, just strictly on the name Mercedes, not even looking at the car yet. So that was always my process when it came to the pricing. If I see that we have a high enough brand equity, which to me is anything over 70, it's time for a price increase.
Yeah, I think early on, probably midpoint in the simulation is when I really start looking at the numbers and the reports, and I realized that we were doing good. We were performing well. In others, I think we were hitting our targets, but I think the missing piece when we learned is that we weren't charging enough to really reap the benefits of having that good brand equity, that Aldo was talking about. Because it was almost like early on we were almost wasting it because we weren't charging enough and we weren't getting the good profit numbers. And in the last round, I think we kind of we jumped the price up a little bit, but we saw the return that because our profits, went from being less than $1 million to almost 25 million in one round. So that pricing is a real interesting aspect of it, and you got to kind of find that sweet spot. And I think I'm more like Aldo, and in my thinking is I never ever want to have the cheapest product in any of the simulations so far. That was never my strategy. I always wanted to have a high quality product that people would pay more for. And here was just trying to find that nuance between what you're offering, what other people are pricing. This simulation has had a lot more layers than some of the other ones, but I think we did pretty good. I think we're going to see how it plays out in this last one. Hopefully, we'll be able to kind of move up a few spots, but we'll call it. Next, we have production and distribution, and this is probably one of our more challenging areas. Is trying to figure out. It seemed like we couldn't break past that 100,000 units sold kind of barrier. That felt like we could never get beyond that. So even when we produced more than that, our average every single round was between 95,000, 97,000. It seemed like we just could never get past that. And this is probably the thing we couldn't quite put our finger on about what was going on with that. And I think the last thought we had around why we were struggling to get above that 100,000 is that in terms of the markets that we were in, we had a 5-inch phone, and we had to look and see who else was in that same market with that 5-inch phone, but also look at the demand. And if we probably could go back, and we'll talk about this when we talk about research and development, we probably would have played with some other different phone sizes just to kind of tap in some markets that never were tapped into, like that 7-inch market, which I think we would have been able to produce more and move more product. But this was the one we had to kind of play around with. In our last round, we decided to go a little conservative to try to save money on HR, and to boost our overall profitability. And once again, we'll see tomorrow morning, but we feel pretty confident we'll be able to move all of our units and won't have anything left over. But this is one of the ones that this was hard to kind of put our finger on to kind of nail it down. So any other thoughts about that, guys?
No, I agree.
Yeah, this was a tough one. So we're gonna move to research and development, and this is one of the areas that Andy kind of came in and kind of had a natural kind of focus on, about how we're investing, what mix of investment would make sense for the markets that we're trying to go in. He was always the one that was like, well, let's look at the consumer profile. Let's see what they want. And we was trying to find that balance. So we'll allow him to kick off the conversation talking about research and development.
Yeah, so here it was mostly looking at the reports. Round one was looking at the consumer profile. It seems like a 10% was looking into speed, and then 9% were looking into battery, another 9% into camera. So we settled in the screen size for 5 inch, and then we kind of had a conversation which of these categories to go into. And all three of us, in the shoe simulations, we kind of just invested into two and left one alone. So we decided to tap into battery and camera, given that the two percentage together will give us 18, almost a 19% total, versus just going into just the speed, which would only give us 10. So we put some money into battery and into camera to kind of try to dominate into those both those kind of categories. And then we kind of said, okay, let's put something into speed just to see how others would kind of be at, what level they're going to be at. So in the first round for speed, I think we only did like 500,000.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, just to test the market, or not the market, to see. It was more of a interest to see what other companies were gonna do. But we went heavy on battery and camera, and I think it went well for us. Our results were that, um, our customers liked that we hit two categories versus just hitting and focusing on one. So we kind of kept that throughout each round. We did put a little bit more money into speed just to kind of keep our phone as very popular as possible, because we kept raising the price. So as Aldo and me kept going back and forth with the pricing, I kept saying, okay, so if we're going to raise the price, we're going to have a better product. So here is where, our battles were settled in the R&D department.
Yeah, and my thinking when it came to the specs that we can invest money in, I kind of associated with my real world experience. In 2020 and 2021, speeds on brand new cell phones is not an issue. All these phones are fast. The things that people usually gravitate to a lot is, will the battery last me all day? And will the camera take beautiful pictures of my family or my vacations or myself? So my thinking was to invest heavily on those particular categories in order to satisfy our customers with two of the best, which I feel were two of the best experiences or categories that you can offer your customers: battery life and an amazing camera in this point in time.
Yeah, I remember, Al, that was like the first thing you had asked when we came to this decision. He asked us, like, what's most important to you? And I think that's, I think you highlighted something that was key throughout the simulation, which I think I did more in this simulation than the other ones, where I think we took a very real world approach to it. So it was like, Aldo literally was like, what's most important to you, speed or battery or camera? And we were like, well, I think I'm buying the phone because of the camera, battery. So we really made a decision initially less on the consumer reports. It was more just on our own response to that. But then I was thinking about later on, when we were thinking about different markets, we were saying stuff like, thinking, well, Canada probably has more expendable income, so it makes more sense to go to that market, even though that wasn't based on anything that was in the simulation, just our own perception. So a lot of that real world stuff kind of crept in more in this simulation than the other ones. But yeah, this is a the point that I really like when we took away was like, if we're going to charge more, we have to provide a better quality phone. I think that was a connection that we made pretty early on, and you can see our investments for this last round. We really we've invested more in this round in research and development evenly, with the mindset that we're really going to try to get as much of the market as we can, especially for this last round. That 5-inch choice was another one. It was just like, let's, if it seemed like there was big markets in every market, there was big consumer groups that didn't care. They didn't have a phone preference. So we figured, let's go with the 5-inch, which would have a lower production cost. So we were thinking about all of those elements all at the same time. But yeah, this was a pretty cool part. So now we're gonna kind of transition to marketing and sales and advertising, and this is the area that from like the first meeting, Aldo kind of came in and was like, we gotta get top brand equity. We're gonna spend money. He came and said, I want to spend money in this. We can cut corners everywhere else, but we're gonna put money into advertising. And to his credit, we've pretty much nailed this for the whole entire simulation in terms of our brand equity. So we'll let him lead this conversation about kind of our approach towards advertising and marketing.
Well, like you were saying, my whole deal was I wanted the most brand equity as possible so I could charge more. And being able to have the list of categories that our customers in this market paid attention to, whether that be TV, billboards, newspapers, social media, was very helpful. The only part of it that still kind of gets to me is when you have those lists of categories that your audience responds to, it always seems to add up to 80%. We can never find that last 20. When I was doing it on my own simulation, the most I got up to was 86. And every round, for as much rounds as I could, I would change a few of the numbers into some of the categories that weren't listed as places that my customers get their media, their influence from, because I was always searching for that last 15 to 20%. I wish it was a little bit more clear on, all right, so your main audience responds to these 3 categories. The rest of your audience is broken down into these 2.
Yeah.
Because it's never 100%.
Or even like the effectiveness for each of the different types. Like that would be in the report. Mm-hmm. How,
So if you could find out that TV was 20% effective, but newspapers were 50, probably invest a little bit more.
Yeah.
Into that. Now you said that, I wonder if that's how it works on the back end. They just don't show us.
Probably.
Like, yeah. Like these categories are the ones everybody's in. We got to figure out the right number to give them to get that 100%.
I'm like you. I was only able to get about 80. I don't think I really got higher than 80 on any of the simulations. Maybe like 83 or something. So this was a weird one. I think overall, trying to understand how this one works is a little bit challenging. We initially started just in the U.S., and I think we were in the U.S. just for like 2 or 3 rounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided to jump into Mexico because you saw early on that Let's Connect was like the only one in any other market besides the U.S. So they were making really minimal investments, but they had all the equity. So
yeah,
like we got to jump on it because they weren't. I mean, we were outspending them almost 10-fold in marketing, but because they were the only ones out there, and that's kind of prompted us to kind of jump into Mexico a little bit after a few rounds, and we made the investment. We were able to get brand equity there too. So, but yeah, this is interesting. And this is one I think I just wish there was a little bit more feedback.
Yeah, just a little bit more on how that breakdown works, so we could effectively spend our money.
Yeah. Anything you want to share, Andy, on this one?
If we go, what's the sales and marketing here it seemed like we would debate on the amount that we
to give
would,
you.
yeah,
Mhm.
to invest into marketing. At one point we had considered doing the price discount, but we scratched it off because it just it wasn't going to work out for us.
Yeah,
um,
because the price discount went by the price of the last simulation instead of the current one.
yeah.
Yeah, it does some weird thing. We'll like average it out, and then
Mhm.
so it like we would have like our phone was like $650. We do a 10% discount, and all of a sudden it's like 300. We that was like another weird thing about this that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, by doing this, you also have to allocate, certain funds to for that price discount. So you have to,
Yeah,
one, basically put money towards the discount portion of it, and then you have to think that you have to hire more employees for this discount part as well. So that, I don't know, for us it kind of didn't work out.
Yeah, it seems
um,
backwards. In order to apply a discount, you had to spend more money.
yeah.
yeah. It's crazy. I'm looking at our history here. In that first round, we spent 15 million.
Yeah.
At the last, we ended up with 6 million. But the reason why that happened is because we spent 15 million and we got 100% brand equity. But then we started looking at what other folks were investing, and we realized that we were spending so much more that we
Mhm.
had enough room where we can spend less and still be the
Yeah.
brand leader. And that's that whole thing. I think Andy was talking about that first round. You just don't know how it's going to play out. And once we saw that, and we was like, okay, we got it. We can still hold on to it by still spending considerably less money. And I think at least in the United States, we were the brand equity leader for all rounds so far. But you can see our spending went from 15 million down to 6 million. So it's about being so much about this is being responsive to the market, responsive to your competitors.
But I also think that first round we needed to go big because everyone had that extra chunk of money. The
Yeah.
first round was the money that we had. And that first budget year we had a lot of money.
Yeah,
Basically, if we wanted to, we could have bought into the 6-inch or the 7-inch. We could have bought into all three, well, not all three, the into Canada, into Mexico, and we would have had money to kind of play with. We kind of went a different route, and it kind of worked for us. I think our downfalls are in another area, but I think our marketing kind of skyrocketed, and our numbers in that area kind of say it for themselves.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What saved us through the simulation, I think, was our marketing efforts.
Yeah. I know. I when it comes to this part of simulation, I always like to have money left over. I feel like I need that liquidity in case something happens in one of the rounds and I'm down like 4 or 5 places. I can make a big push later on. So
Yeah.
I was always the person saying, maybe we should have a little bit of money left over.
Every round.
Mm-hmm.
And we and
Like,
we not, and we did. We always, I think this is the least amount. We have about a half a million left. That's the least amount we've ever had at the end of a round. We just try to just have something, a little cushion, just in case. But I think we did good in this area. I think it was because of that first round we kind of set ourselves with a good foundation. Because from what it seems like to me, and I don't understand the mechanics, it seems like it's kind of accumulative. So it's like once you kind of get into that first, that you get that top level, it's almost like that carries over a little bit into the next one. So it's like it's just easier once you're number one to stay number one. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, this was another one, but with the three different markets, just different layers involved, and you have to weigh up: is it worth it paying the money to go into a new market? Because it costs like what 2 million, I think, to expand. So those are all kind of things we always have to kind of figure out and throw around.
yeah.
So here we go to this is the toughest one, HR.
Oh man.
Now, I think for all the rounds, I think we might have been in sixth place for HR score. Um, this is the one that just is really kind of, and I think we all had very shared experiences about the HR function of this simulation. Just kind of wrapping our mind around how it works and how to make these investments. And this is one of those things we just couldn't figure out early on. Like, why do it seemed like we had so much more staff than everybody else. So our HR expenditures were higher than all the other companies, but our score is the lowest. And we figured out it's because we had so many employees. And that towards the end of the simulation, we started really paying more attention to that. And in the last round, we really made an intentional effort to keep production down, keep that HR score down. The first round, we had an issue with the training functionality. For some reason, it wouldn't add on, and we kind of had to play with that. And then we figured out how to work that training mechanism, and then we started seeing our numbers going up a little bit. We actually just didn't invest a lot of time in this in terms of morale. We made some general benefits decisions. We didn't. I don't think we ever pulled. I think maybe one time we may have pulled the HR report. We didn't think about it because we were doing well everywhere else. And but we also figured out also that we think that was eating into our profitability was our turnover costs. So towards the end, we got a little bit better. We started being a little bit more intentional, but early on, we kind of didn't put as much thought into this. And but I don't know how that impacts the overall score, and except for we know that turnover rate kind of dealt with our profitability. We played a lot with the number of employees. That was another challenge. We set all the other numbers in place and then come to realize we got to make all these HR challenges and we didn't have enough money, which made us have to go back and do some trade-offs just so we can ensure that we still had a little money left over. So that was a ongoing kind of balancing act. But towards the end, we kind of got that down to a science. We kind of figured it out that we had to do. And we kind of had a sense of where we would be with our HR. So we didn't, we were never really kind of in a bind where we had to make these drastic cuts in production or something. But this was probably one of the areas that we didn't put quite as much effort into.
I also feel like it's one of the hardest areas. I wish we had the ability to manipulate HR from the very beginning, from the very first simulation, just to be more comfortable with it, because it is a huge hit to your profit if you don't have the right numbers in HR.
Yep.
You got to read like a lot of the little fine print because like even like with that training to wrap your mind around how that works, like it took us a couple of rounds to kind of go, oh, we realized we thought we was making an investment, but we weren't doing nothing. We was putting, so the money was so small, and then we got to go like 10 times as much just to kind of have any impact. And we did that, and then all of a sudden our productivity and stuff started going up. But yeah, this whole segment, there's not a lot of information about it in the manual. There's not a lot of stuff like on YouTube, so we kind of have to figure this one out, and this is definitely one of the harder ones.
It's hard also because in one round you'll be probably producing 120,000 units, so you'll need, let's say, 60 or more employees on the production side. But the following round, depending how that round went for you, you didn't sold enough units, you have to cut, that amount of units you're producing. So let's say you go down to 70. Now you're basically firing all those people,
which has cost.
And then basically that costs money to do. And then let's say the following round you're producing the 100,000 again. You're then hiring that amount of people. So that it's something that at the same time that we say we didn't really 100% focus on it, since our marketing kind of went very high, we had to hire a lot of employees in marketing.
Yeah.
Our production kind of went from like 100 to 120. On the bad year, it went down a little bit, then back up. It's kind of one of the ticket items that I agree with Aldo. You know, when we were doing our simulations, we should have had HR open since, you know, the beginning. And I agree with Joseph. There's not a lot of information on this. The long video where, you know, I learned how to kind of maneuver around the software simulation. When it comes to HR, it just basically, I think there's maybe 5 minutes on HR, and it's just the basic. This is how you click on benefit. This is how you hire an employee. It doesn't really run through, you know, the what ifs or the how tos of HR. Like no hints of this is what's gonna happen if you do this or that. And
Yeah, if you put too much money into marketing, you're gonna have to hire more people.
yeah, and it's gonna cut into your profit, and it's gonna, you know, if you do this, the morale is gonna go down, and
Your revenue numbers will look great, but that profit margin will be real small.
it's
Yeah. You just have to figure it out. Yeah, and this is another area that, like, if there was one thing I wish, like, we would look at the other companies and we couldn't for the life of us figure out, like, we would have literally 170 employees and other companies would have like 70 or 80, and but their scores would be high, and I was like, how are they operating with so few staff than us? You know.
yeah,
And I think, like you were saying, and we were part of that was our marketing, because we had put so much money into that, but it was still like, I would love to see those other companies HR kind of just their what they were spending, because it just didn't add up sometimes. So now we're gonna move on to here. These are the reports, and as you can see, we purchased a lot of reports. It was kind of just automatic. The ones that we would buy, probably the most important would be the media research one. We wanted to get that marketing boost, and we would always forget, but we get it in there just in time to get that boost in our marketing. But competitiveness, company investments were probably the top two that we would use. And basically what we were trying to do is, through the competitiveness and the company investment reports, working with them in tandem, is to try to figure out the strategies of the other companies. So we try to get into their heads almost and think like, how are they gonna, what are they doing? And a perfect example of this is that going into the fourth round, Andy was able to look at the reports and look at what, like, Ultimate Wireless was doing. And he predicted, he said they're going to make a big investment in production this round. And we get the reports, they ended up spending 12 million in production in that round, compared to like 2 or 3 the round before. And that's the kind of thing we would do with those reports. So it's try to figure out what these companies are doing, what were they thinking, how are they marketing, how are they investing their money, to help us know how we have to position ourselves. And then from there, we would look at market share and size, brand equity, to look at those consumer profiles and see which one of how we are reaching our customers. And we realized kind of early on, well, not early on, probably midway through, that a market that we were doing good in is the people who didn't care about screen size. And that helped us to kind of make the decision to stay in the 5-inch range. But we were trying to see what was the capabilities of, if we go into Canada, what do we have to do to be profitable there? And we will look at that consumer profile report to kind of get a sense of what the demand is. And personally, this is something that I love, the reports. I when I was doing the individual simulations, I would buy every report every time and really try to look at them together and try to figure out what's working, what's not working. And so this is really one of the best, another good part of this simulation in having access to that information. So you're making decisions based on data and not just kind of going off of what's in your gut.
The free report was better.
The free?
The free.
Yeah.
So sometimes, it would get down to the wire, and I'm like, I don't know if we have, 100,000 to look at other company investments or something like that. But
yeah,
so sometimes we actually hit all the reports before we actually started playing with the money. That way we didn't have an excuse not to look at them, because some of them, it's almost like the same information sometimes, but is all about the numbers. You think someone is kind of doing the same thing, and when you look at it round by round, they went from left to right, and you're like, what was their strategy? Why did they decide on this, or what were they thinking? So it's kind of been interesting, and Joseph actually has been key in kind of reading the numbers very like into the fine point for us. So we would kind of discuss the reports, and then he would look into the numbers and then say it to us, and then we would kind of base decisions on that and kind of come up with a strategy that we think was best to kind of stay afloat and stuff like that. And overall, I think everything has worked out for us very well.
Yeah, and I tell you, this was probably the area where I enjoyed being in a team, because I remember being individual. One of the hardest things is when you're in one part of the simulation and you need that piece of information from like one of the reports, and then trying to figure out what report it is.
Mm-hmm. Having another person in there that can remember what report it is
trying to go back. And so we worked out a little system where we would be on Zoom, and I would have this screen share, but then Andy would be in one portion on his computer, Aldo be in his. So then we could, what did the competitive, what did the performance report say about this? And without having to change the screen, Andy would be able to pull up those numbers out. So Aldo will be able to pull up those numbers. That's when like having a team really helped out with this, or even just to remember what report to look at, because sometimes I forget,
Yeah.
we go to find that, and then but it will always be somebody on the team that will remember. So I mean, that's one of the good things about having a team, different eyes and different approaches. But yeah, this right here is so important, and if you can really figure out how to put the reports together, you can kind of get a sense. Andy was just talking about, we were looking at some of the other decisions. We were like, why did they do that? It seemed like they were doing the exact opposite of what you would do, because we was looking at the reports and we realized people were changing screen sizes and changing their price. And we're trying to figure out, why would you change your price now? And, so having the reports definitely helped out with that a lot. And that media, that boost on marketing, it's like a little like get out of jail free card. Once you figure that out, make sure you get that, every round. But
yeah,
this is one of my favorite parts, is analyzing the reports. That's definitely something I enjoyed personally. So this is kind of the last section here. And the only thing I really want to probably we could talk about this all together, is stocks and issuing shares. We kind of tapped into this early on, and we figured it out that this is a way for us to generate some more money into our budget. And we tapped into it early on. We got that 10 million real quick. And I remember one of the conversations early on was, do we go for a loan to get money, or do we go with stocks? And we chose stocks just because we were gonna have to pay it back. But I think this definitely helped us out. But this is another one of those things we had to kind of figure it out. And it makes sense in terms of how stocks work, but just how it worked in the simulation. This is another brand new element that weren't in any of the other simulations. So we kind of had to figure it out. And we still don't know if we did it right, but we just know we sold some stocks and we got 5 million one round and 5 million another round. But I think that was another important part.
I just wish there wasn't a cap on it. We got a company. We should be able to sell as much stock as we want.
As long as the demand is there, right? Yeah.
As long as the demand is there, we can sell. We can just have, if you feel like we've oversold, just have, the effects of the stock price dropping, because, it's dilution into the volume.
Yeah.
Giving us a 10 mil cap felt like a handicap. It's like, you got some free money here. Well, it's not even free money. You have money that your company has generated revenue. Yeah, this is brand equity. It's like your brand is now worth this much. You can sell that brand equity directly to your customers.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be capped on that.
Yeah, yeah, we also thought maybe early on we could have did a loan that might have been able to help us through a couple of rough rounds in the middle, but we didn't get a chance to play with that. We didn't really do too much in terms of the financial reports. The other reports were a little bit more helpful in terms of what we were doing, because I think to look at what you're doing in a vacuum doesn't make a lot of sense. You got to look at what you're doing in the context of the market and the other competitors. So, you know, these are good, but I need to know how this decision is going to impact what's happening in the market. So we use those reports,
Yeah.
a little bit
They,
more.
I think some of these are in the performance report, a little probably condensed, but
Yeah, in the bottom. Yep.
I looked at those, but for me it was more of, the other reports were more key.
Okay. We're gonna close this out, and I guess I just want to give us all a chance, just briefly, kind of to share overall experience, with this. And I'll start. I'm. I think Andy talked about it earlier. I'm not a big fan of group projects and team projects. A lot because you just don't know who you're going to be assigned to, and there's always that uncertainty. And then now you throw in that we're all virtually, and I just wasn't sure how it was going to work out. And it was definitely way more positive than I thought it was going to be. And I think we all are. I think we all came in with our set kind of approach. And I think that if we probably left here and went and did individual things, we probably go back to our individual approach. But I think we came together and we were able just to kind of work through, just having some differences of thoughts. There really wasn't any issues at all with that. We would just a lot of times we just talk it out, and sometimes just find a compromise. What's in the middle?
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of, we just kind of work from there, and we also just had a very our approach was like, well, let's see what happens, and then we'll make an adjustment, and that's kind of how
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, we'll make the adjustment as in the next round, and that kind of helped us to be able to move through it. We found it took us about an hour to kind of go through everything,
Yeah.
and we used Zoom to do it. And I think it worked out. It was a really good experience. A really good experience. These guys are great to work with. So that's my 2 cents about the experience. So.
I had a very good experience. This is probably the best team I've been on since I've been at Cambridge College. I've had several group projects, and some were great and some were not so great. This is definitely one of the great ones. Andy and Joseph were both on top of the game. Anything I needed, if I asked a question, they get into a report. Well, this and this right here, it explains that. And the simulation itself, I really enjoy. Like I would actually do this thing by myself, not for a class, just to see
Yeah.
how things play out. Yeah, that's all I got.
I have to kind of agree with both, and I think they've kind of touched on everything pretty much. For it to be a virtual experience, just trying to depend on what individuals have going on, it is kind of difficult sometimes. And we set a time and we worked through it. It took us probably the whole hour each time that we met on Zoom. None of those we walked away in disagreement. We kind of, how Joseph said, when we kind of had, like, I wouldn't say a disagreement, when we kind of said, well, I don't know. We kind of threw our hands and said, let's see how this is gonna go, because that's the simulation game.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how other companies are gonna do their thing, and let's see who comes out on top. And it's got to the point where I wake up in the morning and I run to the web and I log in just to see the little box. Oh, what place we hit? Who's on top with profit? Once I see that, I'm like, all right. When I get to an actual computer, I'll look at the whole thing and see how we really did. But the first thing I want to see is how we came in. And it's been great. I mean, for it to be a virtual team like this, I can't have asked for a better group.
Yeah, I had that same thing when I was doing the simulation by myself. Like first thing in the morning, all right, let me see how my decisions came together.
Yeah.
With the group one, I kind of was slack on that because I knew Andy was going to text me the results.
Okay.
So it was like, all right, just wait for Andy to text me the results.
Yeah, it was kind of cool how we all just kind of fell into our roles, and everybody, held up, did what they were supposed to do. And it just was, we found our rhythm, and we knocked it out. And yeah, I'll get up first thing in the morning, grab my iPad, and I'll take a few minutes laying in bed, looking at some of the reports. And my wife will look at me crazy. I'm like, I got to get this is Ultimate Wireless. I don't know how they move these 130,000 units. I can't figure it out, but that was part of the fun of it, But yeah, it was much better than I thought it was. And I actually do plan on using this platform on my job, because I think that it's so realistic, having to manage so many different layers. So I hope to use this as part of our leadership development in the company that I work for. So I'm gonna look into making this as part of what we do. So, but if nobody else has anything to say, I guess it's a good time for us to kind of go ahead and stop this. But we thank you for this opportunity. This is a really cool idea, and I think this is the first time they've done this course online. And I think, from me anyway, I think it's been a really good experience overall. And
yeah, I agree.
And this simulation is great. It really is really cool. I think it really throws you into what it feels like to run a business. So our hats go off to you. But with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off and end our presentation there.